Hello and welcome back to another update. This update I'm going to show you what I'm currently working on, which is the AI flight controller, and I'm doing it from the perspective of inside of a cockpit. The reason I'm doing this is, well, it's a lot easier to work out a lot of different issues when you're actually inside the cockpit as opposed to viewing it from third person, following it around like a chase camera or fly cam. Also, I have these panels in here that give me some information. It's useful to me. And basically, this will be a player ship, flyable ship, the cockpit. And the player will essentially use the same system that the AI ships use, with the exception that the input controller will be controlled by the player, which moves the ship around. But the weapons components and all the different components on the ship are actually shared with the same systems that the AI agent uses. That way, whenever I build ships and I add different weapons or have different weapons components that can be swapped out, I don't have to build them separately for player ships. I can just build one component and it's shared between all of the ship prefabs, and it will create less work for me later on. Also, doing it that way, the player, if I want to, I can have the AI system be able to take over for the player ship if the player leaves the cockpit while in the middle of a fight and goes to the tactical view to command the fleet. Uh, they can have the AI. They can either sit here. There'll be a switch basically to turn on autopilot, which will basically allow the AI to take over the ship while the player is busy doing something else, if they want to do that later on. So you can see, I wanted to go ahead and show you guys basically the early stage. That's very, very rough around the edges, to say the least, at the moment. So, but I'm working on it, and it's really tricky. A lot of different aspects of the flight behaviors, when to trigger the pathfinding, when to course correct when you're too close to a ship. There's just so many variables. For example, there's a mapping system, right, to determine um, when to veer away from a target. The system has to know what class of ship it is versus what class of ship it's targeting, and then there has to be a mapping system, which I already have in place, that determines when it will uh, basically get too near the object and need to course correct and fly away from the object in some direction. I've also been working on, so there's an issue there. You can see there's kind of a jitter going on, which I'm trying to correct that. Uh, I think it has to do with the interpolation, because I am interpolating the rigid body of this ship I'm sitting in, but I'm still seeing jitter. I've also been doing work to the indicator system. Now the indicator system only shows enemies on enemy teams, and I will be making some changes to that to show which ship is actually targeted by the weapon systems on this ship. basically, I think I'll do a brightness and a dimming system on the target indicator shader, and uh, nearby enemies will be kind of a dimmer color, and then whichever one is actually targeted by the player will be a brighter color, or I'll add an animation to it. And I'm also going to add some more line renderers to help me do various things, like whenever the pathfinding is triggered, I want to see the exact course that is being plotted and how the ship is following that course from the inside perspective of the cockpit. When I first did it, I built it from a basically viewing the ship from a fly cam, and I used uh, draw lines in the editor. But I'd like to see it from this perspective. And you can see the engine mode is changing. Whenever the ship gets too close to a target, it'll try to match that target's velocity at the moment. Another thing that worth noting is I do have VSync on, so it's locked at 60 frames per second. Another thing that's difficult is the hard points that fire only in a forward direction, which is the guns on the ship, basically, that are not turrets. Um, I do think I'm going to add an aim assist to forward firing uh, hard points that are locked in the forward position to give them a slight rotation ability. Because it's, even though I believe I have my math right on setting the target distance in the Z vector ahead of ships to get, and it's depending on the velocity of the projectile round too, to try to aim the ship at where it needs to be firing, it's still very difficult for ships to actually hit their targets depending on how the weapons are mounted. So if it's a wide angle on this ship and it's a narrow ship, it's going to be shooting kind of in the right area, but the bullets won't be hitting. So I'm thinking I might go with an aim assist on these forward firing, which will give it maybe a 20-degree angle rotation uh, ability on these forward firing weapons. And then I think that ships will definitely hit their targets a lot easier when they're aligned with them, especially if the angle's less than 5 degrees, between 3 and 5 degrees or less. Yeah, and dealing with attacking capital ships is something I definitely got to work on. Um, you can see it's trying to attack this large capital ship over here, the Decimator. And it basically keeps getting close to it and triggering pathfinding. so it's not actually attacking it. It's attempting to, but it keeps just flying towards it. And basically, I have the mapping set to trigger pathfinding at a certain distance from large objects like this. So basically, what needs to happen is it needs to course correct and fly away a certain distance, depending on the capital ship itself, or it'll just keep turning around, and once it reaches a distance that it won't trigger the pathfinding system, and then it'll rotate towards the target, and it just keeps it's basically stuck in a loop. So there's a ton of stuff that has to be worked out. Ton of stuff. Building a space game is a lot of work. That I will tell you. It's a lot of work. And there's some issue with the shadows going on there. That's probably my clipping. Distance on the frustum of the camera. Since I added some more, I added a UI camera, which has a very small clipping. Anyway, so this is basically just going to be stuck here, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this video off. And if you like what you see, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and keep following me. In my next update, I should have a lot better flight behaviors out of the AI, and definitely handling how it handles attacking capital ships. And so that's going to be my focus until I get it, pretty good. Until I'm satisfied, will be dogfighting flight behaviors. I'll add more systems such as the ability to evade. It'll detect when it takes a large burst of damage from a ship. The ability to decide when to return fire, which is a retargeting mechanic, to change its target to something that is dealing a lot of damage to itself. Uh, the evasion would be triggered whenever it gets low on HP. It would attempt to evade. That way, it can, if it's following, if a AI ship is currently following a target, it won't just stay locked onto that target while it's taking damage and be destroyed. It'll go into an evasion mechanic, which it'll try to basically get away from the fight or get out of the fight before it does try to retarget a new target. And there's also some issues with floating point precision that I'm running into because I scaled the world down. I may need to scale it up slightly until I can get rid of these floating point issues, because it looks like I hit the floor, as they say, by scaling it down to 10% of normal value. That, or I need to actually not scale the game objects and go ahead and just scale the mesh down to 10%, set all the game objects scale to a value of 1, and see if that fixes the issue. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I will post another update within the next few days probably, so stay tuned.